I get asked the question quite a bit, which is the best 529 college savings plan? Vanguard's 529 plan, New York's, Ohio's, Utah's, Nevada's, and there are a ton of rankings out there to help you choose the best 529 college savings plan. But the truth is, it really matters on your particular situation and your family. For example, some states have a state income tax and a tax benefit for contributing into their own state's 529 plan, like New York, where other states that do have a state income tax do not have a benefit for contributing into their own state's 529 plan, like California. And other states don't have a state income tax, so from a tax perspective, it doesn't matter which plan you choose, like the state of Florida. Now, when choosing the right plan, it's not enough just to choose the right plan. You also need to make sure that you're starting right. So in this video, I want to talk about 3 tips for starting the right 529 college savings plan. But before we do, if this is your first time at our channel or you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button at the bottom. My name is Travis Sickle, certified financial planner, helping you reach your financial goals. Now, whether or not you're still trying to choose the right 529 college savings plan or start the right 529 college savings plan, they kind of go hand in hand. So it doesn't matter if you're still choosing or starting. And we're going to use the Vanguard funds as the examples today. But even though they're found in the Vanguard 529 college savings plan, they're in a ton of different 529 plans across the country. They're just an example, so it doesn't matter whether or not you're using the Vanguard funds or not, this could still work for you. Now, the first tip that I'm going to talk about is choosing the right funds inside of your 529 plan. And generally, they can be broken down into stock funds, bond funds, cash positions, target date funds, and pre-built portfolios. Now, it doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm just going to help give you some guidance and some tips on choosing the right 529 plan funds inside of your 529 plan. So let me go ahead and pull it up on the screen, and we're going to use the Vanguard funds as the example. So I want to start with this chart right here, and I pulled 3 different Vanguard funds. We pulled the Vanguard Bond Fund, we pulled the S&P 500 Index Fund, and a small cap fund. And I wanted to compare them on an annual basis from 2000 to 2020. So you can visually see the highs and the lows. Now, with the highs, the highest one was in 2003 with the small cap at 45.88%. And then you can see over here at 36.4%, and then again over here at 37.8%. That was for the small cap. But on the flip side, the down years were still the stock positions or the stock funds for both the S&P 500 and the small caps. We can see in 2002, we had negative 22.15% for the large cap or the S&P 500, down negative 19.89% for the small cap. And then again in 2008 at 35 and 36% for both the large cap and the small cap. And you could see that relative to those returns, the bond funds had much lower highs and much less on the low side. So they were much more conservative or much more consistent. So you didn't get as much of a return and you didn't lose as much on the downside either. Now, this is what I wanted to show you right here for the highs and the lows. So there's a lot of volatility. Volatilities is the high highs and the low lows. So a lot more volatility with both the stocks, both of the stock funds for the S&P 500 and the small cap. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, we can see those average returns. Now, we had the consistency with the bonds, but over that time frame, over the 20-year period, the average rate of return for the bonds was 5.11%, where the S&P 500 fund did 8.05%, and then the small cap did the best with 10.76%. Now, the reason I wanted to point this out is if you looked at this chart, you would say, well, I just want the best rate of return, or a lot of people would think that, and you would go towards those small caps. But if we scroll back up to the annualized numbers, we could see that there were some years where we lost over 20 and 30% of the portfolio's value. So it's really important that you understand this. Now, it doesn't mean that you should run away from the bonds or run away from the equities. It's just an educational point so you can understand what you can expect over long periods of time. Because remember, when you're starting to save for college, you have an 18-year time frame to start college. So that's a long-term time horizon. So the averages, again, over the 20-year period are 5, 8, and 10% respectively. Then if we look at the average performance for just from 2000 to 2002. So that's a 3-year period. We have 2000, 2001, and 2002. And what I wanted to show you here is over that 3-year time frame, you would have been down on average on an annualized basis 14.41% for the S&P 500 and down 6.39% for the small caps. And that's really important to point out because even though we have the averages that the small cap did the best, and then second was the large cap, and in third place was the bonds, over time, if you had only started investing in 2000, you would have only experienced a downtrend. So it's really important to understand for your own risk tolerance. So if you can't handle the down years, you want to make sure that you're still on the more conservative side, because the worst thing that you can do in this scenario, obviously this is historical numbers. If you started investing in the year 2000, you would have experienced down years over 3 years, every single year with the S&P 500. Look at that. Down, down, and down. So if you had started going more on the aggressive side, then you would have experienced down years. But over time, the S&P 500 and the small caps outperformed the bond market. Now, past performance is not a guarantee of future returns, but I wanted to point this out so you can understand it and prepare as you're putting money into a 529 plan. And why is this so important? Because college costs are inflating higher than regular inflation. That means college costs are increasing faster than other costs. So if you only invest in bonds, that means you're going to need to save significantly more to reach the same goal. Now, if we flip over to this chart where we put it in dollars and cents, if we started out investing in the year 2000 and finished in 2002, so I have the date set as January 1st, 2000 to 12/31, 2002. If we started with 10,000 all in the bonds, which is the purple line here, we would have ended with just over 13,000. But our initial investment of 10,000 in either the S&P 500 or the small cap funds would have given us a loss of almost 2,000 for the small caps and almost 4,000 for the large caps. So your initial investment would have decreased over that time frame. That is dollars and cents. But if we had stayed the course through the full 20-year time frame that we were showing, of course, you're saving for a different time frame. But for that time frame, if we bring it to 2020, and we bring it to, we're not even there yet, so let's bring it to 12/1/2020, and we can see now we can see the worst performer is the bonds at our initial investment of 10,000 over the time frame from January 1st, 2000 to December 1st, 2020. The $10,000 investment would have grown in the bonds to just over 28,000. For the S&P 500 fund, that would have grown to 36,000. And for the small caps, it would have grown to 58,000. So over longer periods of time, the stocks will outperform the bonds, which brings me to tip number 2. It's not all about the rate of return, contrary to everything that I've just been talking about. And here's also a reason why that's really important to understand, that it's not always about the rate of return. And the reason is because as we get closer to that goal, we want to make sure that we're not taking quite as much risk. So in the earlier years, you still have a long time frame, but as we're getting close to that goal, Going to college is one of those goals that you really don't want to move. Unlike retirement, where you could just work for a couple more years if there's a downturn in the market. But college, when it's time to go to college, you really don't want to delay that goal. So you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. So let's look at everything I just talked about kind of in reverse. So if we look back at the chart right here, where we're seeing those early years on average down years, if we were going to go to school as we're getting closer to that goal, that is where you want to start reducing your risk. But in the earlier years, if you can, to take more and put it towards the stocks, then it would give you a better potential over longer time frames to reach that goal. Now, on the flip side, it is an equation to reach your goal. What do I mean by that? Is if you are taking on more risk, that means you're going to have to save less, because historically speaking, the equities will perform better, means your assets will grow more and you'll have more set aside for college. But if you don't, let's say you put it all into the bonds or a more conservative portfolio, that means you're either going to have to save more or find other sources to kind of close that gap. Which brings me to point number 3, and that is understanding that there are things that are in your control and things that are out of your control. And sometimes those things move between each other. So what do I mean by this? When planning for college and saving into a 529 college savings plan, there is how much you need to save or how much you can save. And on the other side, the target rate of return or your risk tolerance. So it's really important that you're not trying to save less just to take on more risk so you can reach that goal. Because if there's a down market and it scares you into getting out of the market, that is significantly worse for you reaching your financial goals than if you just were realistic in how much risk you can handle and how much you actually need to save. So you want to find out what that balance is and understand that you can't always control what the rate of return is going to be, but you can control how much you can continuously save into the 529 college savings plan. So it's setting the right expectations up front, having a game plan, understanding how much risk you need to take in the earlier years, and as you're getting closer to that goal, in reducing that risk. So what this all does come down to, it's not just about choosing the best 529 plan, it's also about making sure that you're starting correctly and starting the right way when saving into a 529 college savings plan. And that is how you start a 529 college savings plan on the right foot. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.